Boys Season 4 is out, and now we can talk about it in spoilers. I'm a huge fan, and I managed to watch this season as soon as it came out. First of all, please, if you haven't seen all 8 episodes of The Boys Season 4, stop this video, don't spoil it for yourself. Watch it, then come back and we can have fun. Second of all, please do not be that person on the internet who takes my video and starts sending it to a bunch of people who haven't seen it yet. That's really what I don't want this video to be used for, and that's why I'm scared that it's coming out so soon. So please don't be that guy. So now that we know that you watching have seen The Boys and that you're going to keep this information to yourself if your friends have not seen it yet, let's talk all about Season 4. I had a really great time watching Season 4, even though it was a step down from Seasons 2 and 3 for me. And a part of that was the momentum. I feel like 2 and 3 had a pace that was attributed to each of their stories and writings that 4 didn't have as strongly. And we'll get into how that could have been improved, but I still think it's a great season, and I still think a lot of exciting stuff happens. But Season 2, of course, you had the boys going on the run and Stormfront and all of that. I feel like that really added a pace throughout the 8 episodes. Season 3, there's that whole objective throughout all 8 episodes of Soldier Boy and what that character was going to do. And I'll get a bit into why I don't think the objective here was as clear and as thrilling. But let's first talk about what I really liked. It's still really thrilling. It's still really violent, hilarious. A lot of the satire about entertainment and capitalism is still great. And I think, as opposed to maybe the last season where the theme was performative activism, I think one of the main themes in Season 4 is unchecked power. We see that a lot, whether it's with political figures in real life and in the show, and especially with Homelander, because when the show starts, he has all this power that he always wanted, but he's still bored and it's still not enough for him. So he decides to turn Earth into his own, well, he says it, his kingdom, into his own Hunger Games arena, basically, into his empire, because he even tells his son, humans are toys for his amusement. Now he wants to put that amusement to maximal use. But let's go back to the beginning. The season starts off really interestingly because everything I thought would happen at the end of Season 4 actually happens at the beginning, which is election night and the verdict in Homelander's trial, which I think makes it feel impactful because we've already started with a significant time jump. The overarching story isn't the election or the trial, it's rather now that Newman and Singer have been elected, the boys have to find a way to stop this Homelander and Newman-led coup against Singer once January 6th comes and Congress certifies them into office. All the action scenes in this episode are top-notch. I mean, Zoe, Newman's daughter, being like a tentacle monster now, chasing Frenchie and Kimiko. And of course the riot scene, which is the climactic scene of the first episode, I think is really well done. When he sort of brings in the Seven and his fans, including Todd, and gives him the baseball bats and says like, thank you for your sacrifice. I understood exactly what was going to happen. And that is such a crazy scene, especially because the Seven listen to him. They're not just terrified of him, they're terrified to like not be able to cover for his own ass, particularly the Deep. But yeah, I am kind of glad that Todd died because he was a terrible stepfather to MM's daughter. But yeah, Homelander, like I said, he's basically turning the Earth into his Hunger Games arena, and he hires Sage to do that. Sister Sage is such an interesting character. I feel like she brings so much to the dynamic of Season 4. She knows that she's indispensable to Homelander, and that's why she's so confident in putting him down or trying to feel superior to him in the conversation, interrupting him, telling him that he's wrong. Most people would die if they did this to Homelander. But Sage sort of knows that Homelander knows that he needs her, so she can make Homelander her bitch as much as she wants, which I think is really great in their dynamic. I don't think Sage is really coming from an evil place as opposed to a different Homelander enabler from a past season like Stormfront. I think rather she's just, because she's a black woman and she's the smartest person on Earth, her intelligence often goes mocked or uncelebrated or unrewarded. So she's glad that her skills can finally make an impact. It just matters less to her if the consequences of her knowledge are positive or apocalyptic. But yeah, Sage knows everything and she really shakes up the dynamic at Vought Tower, especially for Homelander. And Sister Sage can really make Homelander feel inferior to her in the room because he knows that he needs her, so that he's not going to do anything to her. And when Homelander can't harm you, he's actually not that scary. And that sort of connects us to another character from the past, which is Stan Edgar. And he had a very similar thing with being able to put Homelander in his place and really not being terrified of the guy. And I saw someone comment that Homelander hired Sage because deep down he misses being roasted by Stan Edgar. And there's something to that. I feel like Homelander sort of needs someone to tell him things as they are. In episode 2, we also get to very clearly meet Firecracker, who's played by Valerie Curry, which is funny because just like Aya Cash was Jewish and played Stormfront, a Nazi superhero, Valerie Curry is a lesbian playing basically the Marjorie Taylor Greene of this world. She believes in all the conspiracy theories, just all of the above. And I don't think she's as intriguing of a character as Sage, but I really enjoyed her being around, especially her becoming the foil to Starlight, because Starlight bullied her when she was younger, which I think we still managed to sympathize with Annie when we learned this from Firecracker, because we know how manipulative Annie's mom was. But also, Firecracker, she doesn't just channel that rage, she also channels all those followers who will clearly follow Homelander and conspiracy theorists or whatever. The truth bomb thing, or the truth con, it's like very true to things that actually happen in America. And that whole action scene with her and Splinter, and then they go into the bat mitzvah and it's Marvelous Mrs. Maisel themed. I laughed so hard at that because I was looking at Amazon and I was like, the audacity. We know you guys are successful. Like, we know you guys had this great show. And now you're just throwing it in our faces. But I really did think it was hilarious. I also loved the whole Vought on Ice thing in episode 3. I believe the song is called Let's Put the Christ Back in Christmas. So that tells us as much as you need to know. But I love that set piece with Homelander chasing Hughie around and then the disaster that causes on the set. But perhaps the best scene in episode 3 is the scene where Butcher and Ryan are chatting. The whole scene where he tells Homelander, crying, "I don't want Butcher to die," right away establishes where Ryan's head is still at, that he's still not completely won over by Homelander's heartless, narcissistic superiority over the rest of the world. And that conversation between them is really nice, especially when Butcher admits to him that he's terrified to go. The only way for Butcher to go peacefully then is to make things right with Ryan, because he sees Ryan as the last piece of the old Butcher left, now that Becca is gone. Homelander has a very different dynamic with Ryan. He gives Ryan everything from a material perspective, and he gives him validation in a weird way because he puts Ryan in the spotlight. But he loves Ryan the same way he loves himself. He gives Ryan the same things he would give himself. He thinks that Ryan is an extension of him. Because honestly, when Homelander apologized to Ryan in the season 3 finale, I thought that was maybe the only healthy thing Homelander was ever going to have going for him, was his relationship with his son. But then we see him really melt down and yell at Ryan whenever he does things that Homelander wouldn't do. And it's pretty easy to understand that Ryan is his mother's son, because he still genuinely cares about other human life. Homelander loves Ryan as an extension of himself, of his own ego. But Ryan does genuinely still care about human life. He cares about not doing things that are wrong for the sake of, money. I do want to get back on track here. Let's talk about episode 4. This is one of the lesser episodes of season 4 in my opinion, but it does have Anthony Starr's best performance. It's sort of him going full Joker when he exacts revenge on all the people who abused him in the lab growing up. The problem I have more with episode 4 is the whole Starlight Firecracker standoff just going on for too long. In this season, Hughie and Annie are much more actualized versions of themselves because of the journeys they went on in season 3. Annie is completely ditched the Starlight label and Vought's shenanigans and is working on philanthropy and social justice from the Starlight house, but unfortunately her image regresses a bit when she loses her temper and beats up Firecracker on live TV. But in that same episode, Hughie decides to take charge in forgiveness, and I think this was incredibly earned because Hughie is always the softest and sweetest character in the show, and his arc here is very much a fully realized version of himself. The way he chooses to forgive his mother and therefore decide to lead his whole life with forgiveness from then on. But the whole thing with Hughie deciding not to give V to save his dad from dying, very much is undone in the next episode. Episode 5 is, besides episode 1, I think my favorite episode of this season. And I'll talk about why. First of all, everything in the hospital with Hugh Sr. and Hughie and his mom having to chase after him, I thought was really well done, and it was a really heartbreaking end to the character because we genuinely feel that this is Hughie saying goodbye to his hero. He's realized that his dad is the strongest and most inspirational person throughout his whole life, and now losing him is the most difficult and unimaginable thing he's had to do, even if he has come to peace with it in that moment. But it still completely shatters him as we see him cry in that scene. I think he delivered that really well. But in episode 6, they do the Made in Manhattan walking tour, which I thought was such a hilarious sort of medicine to losing that beloved character, was having them do a walking tour and like dump his ashes, that being the funeral, because he loved Made in Manhattan. But the real reason I love episode 5 is everything with the farm. First of all, I never thought that they would manage to pull off an earned return for Stan Edgar, because he's not only helping the Supes find the virus throughout this farm, but he does have this string that's still tied with Newman. He genuinely cares about her. He's her soft spot, she's his, and their interactions are really strong. But all the action with the soup animals I thought was terrific, and this is the first time that the virus is incorporated, which stems from Gen V's main plot. When I said the objective wasn't too clear in the beginning though, this is what I meant. I think they should have introduced the virus much earlier on, because that's what gives the second half of this season a lot more stakes. Especially that scene between Carl Urban and Jeffrey Dean Morgan in episode 6, where we realize that if the virus goes airborne, it's gonna commit a soup genocide. And that moment with Becca appearing as sort of the angel on his shoulders saying, "Annie, Kimiko," and then Butcher says, "Ryan," to himself. That is the moment I was waiting for with Butcher's development the whole season. I do think it came a little too late in the season. I would have liked it that came maybe an episode or 2 before, but that was a really impactful scene because Joe Kessler is revealed to sort of be the devil on his shoulders this whole time. And episode 5 is also where we get the Vought version of D23. Like when A-Train introduces training A-Train and his voice is so like, "I'm dead, man. I'm done with this. This is so dear to my heart." Whatever. I knew that they were going to bring someone famous for the training A-Train movie. I was like trying to think, okay, if they're doing this, they're definitely going to bring someone famous for his coach. And when it pans up to Will Ferrell, and when Adam Bork says, "You know what I smell? I smell an Oscar nomination." Or he's like, "Okay, Ferrell Streep." And we also see Kate Dunlap and Sam Riordan from Gen V, who are hailed as the apparent Guardians of Godolkin. And they introduce a bunch of movies centered around them. There's one called Guardians of Godolkin Flipped. And the way Kate describes it, this made me laugh so hard even when I'm thinking about it now. She's like, "I'm the popular girl, he's the nerd, and a gypsy switches our bodies," something like that. And it's so obviously like a ripoff of Freaky Friday. And I'm like, how does that belong in like a superhero unit? That just made me laugh so hard. I don't know, man. Up until now, in terms of where the season was falling short for me a little bit, I think it's because the season always insists on giving each character their own storyline, making them the main character of their own story instead of just letting them be supporting characters. Frenchie's storyline doesn't really go anywhere. Like, he turns himself in for murder, and then he just gets released and he's like, "Oh yeah, we've all killed people." And Kimiko kind of goes through the same thing. They both have to come to peace with the fact that they killed people, and that didn't have to take as long as it did. And the Deep, I swear to God, why does this guy keep getting so much screen time? His story arc this time is literally just, he has a romance with an octopus, and then he kills that octopus. And I'm sorry, but that was one of the worst seasons in the show. I feel like by then it lost the self-awareness that it had with the Deep throughout the rest of the show, with him just sitting there after he killed his octopus girlfriend. I just thought it was too stupid. I was like, we're such a good show here. Why are we spending time with this? I feel like at this point, the Deep could have just had like a cameo in each episode. But in episode 6, there's a lot going on in Tech Knight's house. Again, I think some of that stuff goes on for a little too long, but I did really enjoy it for the most part, especially when Homelander recruits his sort of fellowship to commit this coup, and when Newman sort of reveals her part in it to the rest of the people, I thought that was really strong, especially how Sage ties into that. I loved Susan Hayward's acting, where she gets shot in the head and starts acting really stupid because her brains are still regenerating. And Tech Knight dying, I thought was really satisfying, especially because I really hated that guy in Gen V, and when he came back, I was like, really, this guy? I don't know. I know that the character is supposed to be super hateable, but something about the guy's performance just wasn't really entertaining for me. But yeah, both he and Cameron Coleman die in pretty fun ways. That's all I'll say. And they're both scumbags. It's time to take a moment to talk about A-Train. If you told me A-Train was gonna have a redemption arc, I would tell you that's just some stupid fan service, but the way they did it genuinely worked. And the fact that A-Train has lost everything in order to get to this point, including his brother getting paralyzed and him cutting off contact from his nephews. I mean, it's up to you if A-Train really deserves this or if he's really become a good person. But the truth is, it works in the context of the show. In terms of Jesse T. Usher's acting being the best of the show, when he talks about how seeing a kid grin when he brought MM to the hospital gave him more than Vought ever gave him. I guess we'll have to see if Homelander will kill him in the final season. But yeah. Look, this show is anything but subtle. I mean, some of the stuff I talked about in my recap video that happens in season 3 is super on the nose, but I feel like there's a difference between good satire, which is an allusion or a reference to something that's parallel, instead of using the exact thing. The Pizzagate thing was maybe a bit much when a guy comes in to Starlight House and asks where the kids are, or when they talk about banning critical soup theory, or when Firecracker talks about Jewish space lasers. Like, the Homelander Trump comparisons are fun to make because they're not the exact same thing that Trump says. They're just similar things, or similar tyrannical egoistic tactics that he uses, or he deflects responsibility. He thinks that he doesn't make mistakes. But when you say the exact same things that happen in real life, the satire isn't as strong. So although there are some great satirical moments, especially with how fragile democracy is being this overarching theme, I do think some of the satire is a little too much and too on the nose. So we get to episode 7, and I think the main key takeaway is that Newman is finally disillusioned with Homelander. I mean, he literally says to her in episode 3, hey, you're gonna do all these things for me, and then I'm gonna throw you away like trash. And that just doesn't sit well with her. Unfortunately, Newman has done some very horrible things, but Homelander has become too much for her. I don't really know why this woman allied herself with him in the first place. I think she should have stuck with Stan Edgar, but that's a story for another day. So those conversations between her and Hughie are really nice to see because she's finally revealing her vulnerable side again and how she might not really want this life anymore. But the whole thing with like the shapeshifter Starlight, I don't know how much I enjoyed that, especially after the whole fake engagement thing happens and Annie argues with him. We don't get actual closure there. Like the fact that they got engaged is a big thing, and then Annie's just like mad at him for it instead of actually. I would have liked to hear if she would have actually married him or not. Just saying. Maybe that's just me. But I love their relationship. Also, the whole thing with her losing her powers is just really random. I don't know, that kind of just came and went. But that's basically the climactic action scene of the season, is the boys defeating this shapeshifter who's trying to assassinate Singer. And I do wish there was a much bigger fight. I would love to even see A-Train come in and save the day, because we hear about all these riots that are going on because of the certification of Singer as president, but we don't actually see them, and that lessens the impact of what's about to happen at the end of this season. And so I would have loved to even see like 2 action scenes going on with half the characters at each one at the riot, one protecting Singer. I feel like that would have been much more of a ticking clock. I just felt like that action scene was a little bit underwhelming. The thing with Tech Knight sort of giving Homelander his internment camps to use to imprison his political opponents is also a super interesting and shocking revelation, but not much comes out of it, and I'm sure it'll turn up in season 5, but I do wish we at least got a scene in the season finale of Homelander getting one of the internment camps ready to really see that threat in a tangible way. Now Ryan comes back to Butcher, but he realizes that Butcher is closer to Homelander than he believes. Butcher has, as Obi-Wan says, become the one thing he's sworn to destroy, because now he also wants to train Ryan because he's sort of the only hope in killing Homelander. And I really love Layla Robin's acting when she talks about how Ryan filled this hole in her after her grandkids died and how she loves him. But Ryan pushing her, I think, was a little too much. Would he really do that to the woman who took care of him after his mom died? And I really hope she's not dead. I really like that character, and that would make us like Ryan like a tad less if he actually did kill her, even if it was unintentional and just out of a really angry moment. But yeah, that does leave Butcher in a really dark place. But the thing that Butcher does right after is even worse. He walks up to that safe house, and right as they're about to make a deal with Newman, he attacks Zoe and then rips Newman in half. But unfortunately, this is exactly what Homelander and Sage needed to happen. Because now that Newman is dead, Singer has admitted that the boys did this under his orders. So Cabinet has invoked the 25th. Singer is out. The Speaker of the House has been sworn in as president. He's declared martial law because of the riots that we should have seen more of. But now Homelander is basically the Grand Vizier of the President of the United States, and he has all the physical power that he's wanted to, including all the political power. And he's basically CEO of Vought. So when Sage comes in and says, like, yeah, that worked, you shouldn't have fired me, let's do it again next time, I'm excited, that was a really satisfying scene. So now the boys are on the run again, but a few of them get captured by some of Homelander's acolytes, let's just call them that. And Butcher has completely embraced his darkness by driving off with the virus with the image of Joe Kessler behind him in the car. And I don't think this was as satisfying of an ending as seasons 2 and 3, but it does leave a lot to be excited for in the next season, especially because it's going to be the final season. I do think some of the things were stretched out too much. Like I said, there were some things that could have happened earlier in the season, and we could have seen a little more of the action in the finale to make that wait feel more earned. But I am really glad that they're making the 5th season the last one, because now it very much feels like all the pieces are in place for a grand finale. And I really don't know what's going to happen. A-Train wasn't in this season finale at all, so I wonder how much he'll be important in the 5th season. Is Homelander going to kill him? I mean, we know in the post-credit scene, Homelander might want to use Soldier Boy as, you know, the leader of his new task force led with Soups, who are going to put down these riots, and that could be a big threat to the boys. We also might get Gen V in between seasons 4 and 5, even though it'll take longer than we thought due to the unfortunate passing of one of its stars, Chance Perdomo, which really saddened me when I heard about that. I do have a strong feeling that Butcher and Homelander are going to probably kill each other in a big battle at the very end of the series. But I wonder what's going to happen. Like, I doubt that all this, you know, Homelander fascism following is going to die down. I feel like Earth is still going to be very much in turmoil after Homelander dies, if that really does happen at the end of the 5th season. But anyway, let me know what you thought of this season. What were your favorite moments, least favorite moments, favorite character moment, favorite character arcs, least favorite character arcs? Just sound off all of it below, and what you think might happen in season 5 whenever we get it.